But the reality is there's something special when I walk into a room and I see a black male provider. He gets me. I don't have to do a lot of explanation. I don't have to try to draw something on the board. He gets where I'm coming from. I remember I said, black male nurse. I will go into a room and it's a black male patient, and we'll talk about, it might be a patient that's being non-compliant. But I can just go in and say, bro, listen, if you don't take that medication, man, that stuff gonna fall off. And it's like, it's a vibe. It's part of the culture. He's not offended by it. It's like, I got you, bro. I'm gonna do better, man.
Welcome to Journey to Joy Live, a podcast to promote wellness, resilience, and joy while providing mental health awareness and breaking down the stigma of mental illness in the Black community. I'm your host, Dr. Enjoy, and today I bring to you episode 47, The Silent Struggle, Mental Health Realities for Black Men. And as you can see, I have a fabulous guest here, Gideon Esuzor. He's a psychiatric nurse practitioner. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. I am a fan. I've been a fan for at least 3 weeks, for sure. And, I love what you're doing, and it's great to be here having this conversation with you.
Yes, thank you so much. So tell people who you are, because you are more than just a psychiatric nurse practitioner.
All right. So I'm a nurse,
Mhm.
but currently I'm an active duty officer with the United States Public Health Service. So
Uh-huh.
currently stationed with the Department of Homeland Security. Prior to that, I was with DOD, and prior to that, I was with the FDA. Now, as far as my clinical experience goes, I was an ICU nurse, a CCU nurse.
Mhm.
I worked in PACU. I work in cardiac electrophysiology. I was a flight nurse in the Air Force, deployments to Afghanistan and Qatar. So I've had a great nursing career, and I think it was probably 4 years ago I decided, you know what, I wanted to do more, and and Psych MP was perfect. So yeah.
That's so exciting. And you also are a host of your own podcast. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yes. So right now in its current form, it is the Nurse Gideon angle. But in about a month or so, I'm doing a rebrand,
Mhm.
and it's going to be called Be Well with Gideon. Essentially, I'll be talking about the 4 pillars of what I deem are the 4 pillars of health. Then that will be your physical, mental,
Mhm.
financial, and spiritual. And but the target audience is everybody. Don't get me wrong, but I'll be
Yeah.
given from a nursing perspective.
Mhm.
But I do believe that the audience, all audience, is going to get something out of this, because you've been affected by a nurse, or you perhaps you're just curious about the world of nursing.
Mhm.
So it's going to be something for everyone. So look out for it. It's called Be Well with Gideon. It's going to be everywhere, YouTube, everywhere, iHeart Radio. It's in about a month. Look out for that. Thank you.
Sounds good. I can't wait to hear more about that. And, we're talking about Black men, mental health. A lot of men feel stigmatized by mental health or even wanting to talk about it. And, you mentioned being a nurse, you're a Black man, and a lot of people might feel stigmatized being a man in the nursing field. So, talk about real quick, how did you get in the field of nursing and what was that like for you? Did you feel stigmatized or
That's
discriminated?
interesting. That's a great question, to be honest with you, because my plan wasn't to become a nurse.
Mhm.
There are, I'm going to talk about expectations in different sort of culture when it comes to black male.
Yeah.
And so when I came to the United States 23 years ago, the plan was to be a computer scientist.
Ah.
And then I tried that a little bit, but it got a little boring.
Mhm.
And then I was like, I switched majors to pre-pharmacy. And I was going to be a pharmacist until organic chemistry told me, no, you're not going to be a pharmacist. And I was like, organic chemistry, I'm not going to fight with you. Thank you. And, I was just having a conversation with a great friend of mine, and she told me, have you considered nursing?
Oh.
It's like, no, what are you talking about? It's
Uh-huh.
just, speaking of expectations, it is not expected
Yeah.
a black male to be a nurse. It's not an
Right.
expectation.
Right.
So So initially, I didn't think it was a good idea, but upon really doing some self-reflection and doing some research, I decided, why not? And
Yeah.
so that was a long time ago, and 17 years in, I'm still loving the profession. But
Wow.
yes, but I've faced um, questions about my sexuality, being a black male in this space. Um, I'm married with two kids, but for a long time I had to sort of defend my masculinity because I'm a man in this space. But I'm during the initial state of years, I was a little irritated, to
Yeah,
be
of
honest with
course.
you.
Of course.
But over the time, I just understood a little bit of education goes a long way. So that's how I dealt with that.
Exactly. Well, that's really good because I mean, you open up the doors to show everybody, like, and the fact that we say male nurse, like, we should just say nurse.
Thank you.
It shouldn't even matter. And then in my end, like, it's expected that I'm a nurse. Like, when I would be somewhere in public studying my medical books, "Oh, you're a nurse, you're a nursing student." "No, I'm a doctor, I'm in medical school," or whatever, the phase of life is. And so it's expected that men are doctors and women are the nurses, but it's 2024. So
2024. Exactly. Exactly.
anybody can be in any different phase. Now
That's
you
exactly
mentioned
right.
PACU nurse, you mentioned ICU, you mentioned all those things medical. How did you transition into being a mental health nurse or then a psych NP?
Oh, great question. So, um, when I went back to school to get my advanced degree, the plan was to be a family nurse practitioner.
Okay, yeah.
But then the Department of Defense hired me to help recruit mental health clinicians. Okay. And so during that course of my work, I started doing a little bit more research and I started realizing sort of the disparities and the challenges in the mental health space. And I started doing some more research. And I had entertained the idea of being a mental health clinician in the past, but upon doing this work, I realized, wait a minute, there's a need. Not only is there a need for mental health clinicians, there's actually a need for black mental health clinician and then black male mental health clinicians. And
Mhm.
so, and I sort of changed course a little bit, and yeah,
That's
I can be.
awesome. That's good for you to do that because as professionals, there's a type of stigma that we might face going into the field of mental health. Like, well, why are you a psychiatrist? Why are you doing psych instead of, the medical part or being a surgeon or being that other part? So that's something that we have to break down as well. But when it comes to our men in the community, what do
Mhm.
you feel like are the significant barriers that Black men face when it comes to addressing their mental health issues?
So I think you've mentioned it. Stigma is a big part of it, but
Mhm,
I'm gonna go on a soliloquy to make
mhm.
my point, if you
Go
don't
ahead.
mind.
I'm listening.
So currently there are about 20 million self-identified black male
Okay.
United States. Right now, 20 million. However, that group is very diversified because you have black male from Africa, like myself,
Mhm,
and then you have black men from the Caribbean, and then you have,
mhm,
American born and raised black male.
mhm,
There are differences within sort of that collective of black male, right?
mhm.
But there are two things that connect us all. That is expectations and trust.
Mm.
And by expectation, I mean, I already talked about my heritage. There are certain things expected of me as a black male from Nigeria. Not only that, there's actually expectations as a black male from the Igbo tribe in
Mm.
Nigeria, right? For instance, and also the Yoruba tribe. So there are like three main tribes in the country. You have the Igbo tribe, Yoruba tribe, and then you have the Hausa tribe. So the Igbo tribe and the Yoruba tribe, it is expected that you are either a nurse, no, a doctor,
Yeah.
pharmacist, or lawyer, or you're a
Mm.
failure. So you have those expectations, which is interesting. And so when we talk about expectation, we're talking about culture as well. And then the other part is is trust, right? When a man feels as though trust is betrayed, that's it, shut down,
Mm.
right? So these are sort of the two concepts that we deal with as a black male is the expectation of society. What is expected of me as a black man?
Yeah.
Do I express my emotions or not? And we're talking about over decades. Speaking of expectation, over decades of things that how we've been raised, how society views the black male. Do I cry? Do I not
Yeah.
cry? How much strength do I need to display? So those two concepts plays as expectation and trust. Whatever we're dealing with as black male, whatever struggles we're dealing with, those two concepts is constantly at play.
That's really good. I like that, especially the expectations. I mean, there's the societal pressures, the cultural pressures.
Hmm.
There's all kinds of things in looking at other races and what they do. Should I do that? And then there's like generational traumas and personal traumas and just different things that, and then there's the religious background that might be a cause of the stigma as well. I mean, do you feel like there's been family that may have been affected by the stigma of mental health?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's okay if I say this. I think because my father's still alive,
Mhm,
and now that I am in the mental health space,
mhm.
I know for a fact that he's been affected by it in the sense that the expectations placed on him as a young man was too much for him. So my father is the boy, the only boy out of several girls, sisters.
Ah.
And so in that culture, he's expected to be the man. He's expected to be strong. And so he has had to shoulder a lot of the burden, um, family burden, expectations, requirements, responsibility. And he's not had the opportunity to just pause and indulge in some self care
Mhm,
because you don't have time for that.
mhm,
Because the reality, especially for my culture, is depression and anxiety. That is a privilege. You don't have time for that.
mhm.
You don't have time for that. You wake up in the morning and you have things in front of you to do. You have to conquer the world. You have to um, listen to other people's problems and try to deal with those problems. So you don't have the time. And when a man breaks down, he's seen as weak.
Wow.
You're seen as weak,
Yeah.
and so we speak of that stigma. And so what happens is I talk about trust is when they feel as though you think they're weak and you sort of insinuate or even communicate that they're weak. I mean, it's over. They shut down and they just continue to suffer in silence.
Right,
I,
right.
yeah, I'm gonna say this.
Yeah.
We don't curse on your show, so I'm not gonna do that. But you know, you, you may have heard the term, BAN. Some acting like a
Gotcha.
you know,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
get what I'm saying?
yeah.
Some acting like that.
Yeah.
You say that to a black male, I mean, it's over. And so different cultures have different variations of how they communicate, or sort of inform you that you are weak. So that's part of the stigma that we talk about. And to be honest with you, I've been guilty of it. It wasn't until I got into this mental health space that I started to educate myself and have these
Mhm.
sort of conversations, and then I started to see things a little differently. Helping me lead a healthier life myself.
That's so yeah, you said a lot, but that's so important because, I mean, it's almost like, those are like bullies, saying like, "Don't be a wuss, don't be weak, don't be this," and you feel like you have to, but there's something within us or within that person that's missing where they do let that get to them as opposed to, like, having that own positive affirmation for themselves that it's okay for me to be weak, it's okay for me to cry, it's okay for me to feel pain or feel sadness, and you see the black male anger because the anger is what's okay to be shown. Because I'm strong if I'm angry, but what's
Hmm.
underneath is that I'm depressed and I'm sad and I'm hurting. So that's an interesting part of it too. And my husband says all the time, black men, there's just the weight of the world. You're the protector, you're the provider. You just have to be on guard at all times. There's a reel of this girl going into Target with her husband, and like when she goes into Target, she's like, oh, la, 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 la. But when he's going to Target, he's looking at, okay, what's that man doing? What's that threat? Okay, okay. You guys are always on guard. And so it's really difficult.
Yeah, it speaks to the expectations.
Right.
Quite frankly, it speaks to the expectation. And I would say this without offending my black sisters. When we talk about destigmatizing um, the suffering,
Yeah.
um, y'all have a role to play too.
Yeah.
And let's
Yeah.
be honest, because I remember when I was in college, because I was really focused, and the girls, the sisters wanted to only deal with the brothers who are tough and just had this persona, you know,
Mm.
the brother with the book with the glasses going to the library is often seen as as weak. But anyway, uh, you're not expected to cry. You're not expected to show emotion. Then the only emotion, to your point, is yeah, I'm here. I'm ready to fight. Let's go. And so we in the black community, kings and queens, like we have, in order to heal our community, we would have to have more of these conversations and take responsibility for it. I've often said that I should not expect members of another community to do for my community what I ought to be doing. And to be quite honest, that's one of the reasons I wanted to get into this space. I meant to become a psych MP is to have this conversation and
Yeah.
strengthen our brothers and our sisters in this space.
Right. That's really good for you to say, us black women have a job. So it's almost like we can help destigmatize by not having the expectation, like, why is he crying? Oh, he weak. Or why does, I want that bad boy. Oh, he's got to have tattoos. So it makes someone feel like they have to be that way. That's a
Hmm.
good point. But then there's a lot of women I know that feel like that man in the library with the glasses is very attractive. So there are some.
Well, that's good. You're right. Well, it wasn't the case for me. So
Right. That's a really good point. So women give our black men some slack.
I agree. Thank you.
Right. So how I mean, that was actually my next question is like, how do we destigmatize? That is one way. But obviously stigma gets in the way. It's a barrier for us seeking help or for black men seeking help. That's what we're talking about today. How do you feel like that affects them from seeking help and how can they get beyond that?
Well, I go back to expectations and trust. If you, for whatever reason, I'll say this: we have to check ourselves
Mhm.
in the sense that before you insinuate that that black man is weak, I think you ought to pause and do your best to understand where he's coming from. The reality is, I think sometimes people forget that it doesn't matter how educated you are. It doesn't matter how much stuff you see on social media. It doesn't matter how what you see in those books. Like being a black male, the experience of being a black male, right?
Mhm.
Until you are a black male, you truly, truly don't understand what it means to be a black male. In the same way, I do not know what it means to be a woman or a black woman, right? Now, that's, I know we are living in a day and age where things are, interesting. I put it that way.
Yeah.
This is your platform. I don't want to offend, but
No, it's okay. You
like,
mean
like,
like transgender or
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I mean, like I'm talking about the essence of being a woman. I have absolutely no idea what that feels like. I don't, right? And
Right.
people talk about, tap into your feminine side. Doesn't matter
Yeah.
how much I tap into that feminine side. I am not a woman. I'm not. I don't know what it feels like. In the same way, you nobody knows what it means to be a man, especially a black man in this country. It's
Right.
it's a unique experience. So I say that to say, before you call that brother a BAN,
Mhm.
um, consider where he's coming from, what he's dealing with.
Mhm.
Because the reality is that once he get wind of you thinking he's a BAN,
Mhm.
that conversation is over. It is done. That's one.
If you
Second,
wanna spell out what that is, you can. I think people know what we talking about by now, but
yeah, this is your platform. I don't want to.
yeah.
No, what the first one it rhymes with snitch, but it's you've heard
The second one rhymes with pass, another one
pass.
rhymes with, wigger.
We there you go. Yeah. And then the second thing is it's important. We ought to allow men, black men, to be with other black men. What I mean by that is it is should be encouraged. They
Mhm,
need each other. Black men need each other.
mhm.
And this is something my wife is beginning to understand more is when I want to go hang out with the fellas, it is important that I'm with the fellas
Yeah,
because it gives me room to be a black man
yeah.
to express myself. I'll tell you a story. So when George Floyd was killed,
Mhm.
not killed, was murdered,
Mm.
um, I remember watching that video and leaving changed forever.
Mm. Yeah.
And for the next 2 weeks, I won't say I was clinically depressed, but I'll just say I was numb. I'll put it that way. I was numb for 2 weeks. Obviously, I wasn't clinically depressed because I didn't meet the DSM
Function.
criteria, but
Right.
I was just numb. I couldn't
Yeah.
move. It wasn't until I spoke to another black male about
Mhm.
my feelings that he was like, "Bro, I was there with you, bro. I'm there with you. I understand what you were dealing with. I understand that now." And then the next question was, what do we do about it? We need to speak to somebody, right? So it is important that black men are with other black men to talk about challenges that typically affects the black community more than any other community.
Yeah.
And that way, and especially having discussions about mental health, the freedom to have, that way you can destigmatize, mental health,
Right.
mental
So
illness.
yeah, so spaces for Black men to meet and convene, organizations, community
Yes.
supports, that's definitely very important. And, you spoke to it earlier, being able to have a Black male professional as well. Like we look for what we are in our providers. So it's definitely very important.
I do believe this is going to be my life's work.
Yeah.
Being a black male psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner, because I do feel like, listen, no offense to any professional
Mhm.
that happens to be white or yellow or whatever, right?
Yeah.
You deserve your degree. You deserve all the accolades. You deserve reverence. But
Mhm.
the reality is, there's something special when I walk into a room and I see a black male provider. He gets me. I don't have to do a lot of explanation. I don't
Automatic.
have to try to draw something on the board. He gets where I'm coming from. I remember I say, black male nurse. I will go into a room and it's a black male patient, and we'll talk about, it might be a patient that's being non-compliant, but I can just go in and say, bro, listen, if you don't take that medication, man, that stuff gonna fall off. Like, and it's like, you just
Yeah.
it's a vibe. It's part of the culture. He's not offended by it. It's like, I got you, bro. I'm gonna do better, man. It is because it's culture, and this is why I'm a big fan of diversifying the healthcare and nursing workforce. It is important that our patients see us, you know, and we essentially we reflect the population.
That's so true, because that's a part of the stigma, that fear of or intimidation of what are they gonna think of me? Are they going to judge me, if I walk in or the white male professional walks in, what are they gonna think of me because I said this or because I've been sad or because I went into work drunk and then I got fired? Are they gonna understand me? So when that's a Black male physician coming in, they're like, "Oh, okay, you know what? I'm not gonna." There's that judgment that's just not there.
You're exactly right. It is, like I said, it is a vibe. Um, I don't know how to explain it, but it's an understanding. He gets me. He understands, just like when I spoke to actually a frat brother about my feelings following George Floyd, he got it. He was like, "Bro, yeah, you're not crazy." That I felt the same way because I watched a black man. Now I don't want to get into the minutia and the whatever happened, and I'm just saying what I
Yeah,
saw was a
right.
black male being killed in yeah. Anyway, so
You don't
um
have to explain. Yeah.
exactly. I don't have to explain. So there's something to say about speaking to someone that gets you.
Mhm.
It is very important. And so, and this is my announcement to all. I mean, if you're thinking about being a psych MP, please consider it. We need more black male in this space. We really do. So
Yeah, I was just gonna say that because really what you're speaking to, how do we break down this stigma is to get more black men in this profession.
that's and black male. There's nothing wrong with being a psych MP. There's nothing wrong with having challenges, emotional challenges, and there's nothing wrong with speaking to someone about it. Now, I don't want to get too spiritual, but the Bible actually talked about confess your sins to one another. Right
Mhm.
now, it's the context is a little different, but it still applies. Meaning, when you unburden yourself, there's something about unburdening yourself, right? You
Mhm.
give that other person an opportunity to give you resources. You have a shoulder to lean on, and then you have the ability to continue to soldier on, right? I
Yeah.
mean, you think about it. I was in Afghanistan. When
Mm.
you look to your right and you see your brother, see your brother, there's something special. You feel like you can take on the world. Now,
Mhm.
when you are in a battle and you get injured, the other brother look at you as weak. It's like, yeah, we are in a battle.
Yeah.
I got you. And trust me, there is a battle going on in the mind. And the things we deal with at work, the expectations, the way people look at us, the way, I've it's it's happened so many times it doesn't even bother me too much anymore. I could be walking in my neighborhood and literally someone crosses over to the other side because I'm 6 foot tall, I'm dark,
Oh,
I'm bald.
gotcha.
I'm not even bothered by that anymore because when
Wow.
I'm able to have conversations with my brothers and they go, bro, don't worry about it. You are still highly favored. You're still the man. Because if you don't have those conversations, after a while, you start to feel there's something wrong with me. Am I
Right.
intimidating? What is wrong with me? So, yeah, brother, there's nothing wrong with you. The problem is with them. You just be you. But
Wow.
but that's why it is important to talk to each other. Yeah,
Conversation.
have these conversations. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like what you said about the war because when you're wounded in war, it's not seen as weakness. It's actually a sign of strength that you've been through war, you fought. It's like triumph and glory. But then the battle in our heads, the battle and war of life in general, like we think of it that way. It's like whatever illnesses that we might have or disorders or challenges we may experience, we should think of that from a standpoint of resilience and that is a sign of strength, the fact that we can go through something and then talk to someone about it and get out of it. So that is an interesting standpoint.
Yeah. Now, and it goes back to. I, I, it feels weird. I keep going back to expectations, but it is
Yeah.
expectations.
Yeah.
Like what I'm expected to protect, provide. Expected to guide my sons. I have two boys. I'm
Oh,
expected
you do?
to.
I was gonna ask you what
Yeah.
genders, because 'cause I'm raising 3 boys, 3
Oh,
black men.
there you go. I have two boys, and
How
so
old are
they're
they?
they're 9 and 4. And
Oh, okay. Mine
and
1, 3, and almost 13.
well, look at you. Isn't God good? So their expectations. I'm trying to lead a decent life for them, right? And there's certain expectations that come with that because I know I'm not perfect. So even at this point in time, I'm learning how to even apologize to the 9-year-old whenever I'm wrong,
Mhm.
right? So
Good.
and then you deal with work and timelines and the fact that it's just a lot being a black male, and it is important when you start to feel anxious, you start to feel numb, that you speak to someone about it because as we say in our field, what is it, pathologic, right?
Yeah.
Before it becomes a real problem. have a
Right. You can't
conversation
watch
with
it.
another. Yeah,
Go ahead. You said you had a conversation with another.
that's why it's important to have
Oh,
conversation
have a
with.
conversation with another person.
Yes, and if possible,
Exactly.
have a conversation with a therapist, and so they because they're able to guide you and help you figure out why you're having pain here and why you're having these feelings and stuff like that.
So going back to expectations, because you said it, you keep going back to that because it sounds like expectations is a large part of the stigma. So is there a way to rebuild those expectations or break them down? And then my second part of that question, we're raising Black men, right? How can we instill that lack of expectations or kind of modify those expectations as we're growing our kids, as we're raising our kids? That makes
Let
sense.
I'm gonna answer the second question first
Yeah.
because this is something I'm doing now. For
Mhm.
a long time, I was placing the same expectations on my children, especially the first one, the 9-year-old, that was placed on me, right? Failing to realize that one, the times are different, right? It's different. Growing up in Africa, right? There
Mhm.
are certain expectations. I had to go, they say, fetch water. I had to go
Yeah.
look for water because there was no running water in the house. There's certain things that I had to do. Well, my 9-year-old never have to deal with that,
Right.
right? Right. And I was expecting him to be tough like me. Well, I had to be tough like me because I had no choice. And so what I'm doing now is instead of having the same expectation, I'm trying to cultivate and help build the man, build him into the man that God has created him to be. Because I tell my wife this, perhaps, right, I can nurture him to be the one to find a cure for breast cancer.
Right.
Believe it, that is actually a greater and more noble expectation than fetching water.
Right.
It is because there's a lot of lives that will be saved. So it is taking a step back and realize, you know what? It doesn't make any sense to place the same expectations. So I receive him for who he is.
Mm.
I meet him where he
Um,
is, right? So I have a conversation with him and sit down, talk. How was your day? Just having this conversation. Let me figure out what this boy is becoming and
yeah.
meet him where he is. Now, I still have to correct him where he's wrong.
Right.
I do. But and then so answer your first question in the same way. We
Yeah.
need to meet our Black men where they are. I was guilty of that for so long because I came from a society where the expectations of was so grand, right? And we had to overcome so much. You think about it. So I came to this country when I was 20 years old.
Okay.
Now I learned how to read and write at age 9.
Wow.
So came to this country at 20 years old.
Mhm.
Now, I'm not going to pat myself in the back. I've managed to accomplish so much.
Mhm.
So whenever I see my US born counterpart, I ask them in the past, not now, like, if I can overcome those odds and become this, what is your excuse?
Mm.
Right? So I was actually perpetuating that stigma, like those expectations. What is your excuse? But what I failed to realize is that
Yeah.
my background is way different. Listen, I know exactly where my village is. There's
True.
something to be said about knowing where you come
Yeah.
from.
Right.
It's like exactly where you come from. So they don't have that benefit.
Right.
I do. Like my ancestors are behind me, pushing me. And
Right.
I know who they are. I know their names, right? And so the point is meeting people where they are and having that conversation. Like, brother, what's going on with you, bro? Well,
Mhm.
this is okay. Well, let's talk about that, right? And build them up from that point instead of demeaning them and calling them BAN.
Right. Or expecting them to be a certain way. Oh my god, meet them where they are. That's so
Yeah.
important, and that resonated with me because that's what we're dealing with my almost 13-year-old where, it's my husband says all the time, "We're hood parents trying to raise suburban kids."
That's right.
We living in a cul-de-sac
That's
where,
right.
My husband grew up in near projects. It's like, how you gonna
Yes.
try to instill the same
Yes. Yeah.
stuff?
Yes. you
They're
are.
different. We didn't have cell phones. They have cell phones. It is what
You.
it is.
That's exactly right. But you know what's funny? My 9-year-old, he's on a different level when it comes to technology, for instance, right?
Mhm.
Like it's different expectation. I'm like, okay, I guess it's my fault that I've built this comfortable life for you.
Right.
So it's like I'm learning. I have to meet him where he is and try to build him and mold him because I focus more on principles than expectations. What I mean by
Okay.
that is, we are Christians,
Mhm.
so I build them up that way because the goal is to instill in them something that the world cannot take away from
Right.
him.
Right. Right.
Give him those principles that would stand the test of time, so to speak, as opposed to me saying, growing up in Africa, I woke up at 6 a.m. and swept the whole house, which is what I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't expect my son to do that. What I do expect him to do is to respect his mother,
Right.
respect his teacher, be courteous to his classmates,
Mhm.
right? Say yes, ma'am, yes, sir, right? Those principles I feel like are more lasting than you are expected to be. I mean, I don't know what this kid is going to become. I don't know if he's going to be a doctor. I don't know. One time he said he wants to be a YouTuber, for crying out
Of
loud.
course. Yeah, YouTube video gamer. Yeah. Pokemon master. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's so important. And we have to manage these expectations and try to figure out, okay, where did I come from? I have to know myself and then raising our kids. It's tough, but it's okay to reach out for help. That's
It's
true.
okay to reach out. That's why we have folks like you. Is to and let me say this to your audience. Family therapy is important too.
Mm,
If you feel like you need a little tune up, a little understanding, go for it. You might need one session. You might need, they say that, according to Dr. Carlat, he says, I know you know Dr. Carlat, the great psychiatrist. But anyway, he said the first interview, first interview, like a third leave because they just don't vibe with you.
yeah.
Okay. You don't have that patient client, what's it called?
Poor.
Rapport. They don't have that. He say another third leave because that first session was enough.
Mm,
They just need someone to they need to unburden themselves.
right.
And then Dr. Mamana goes, you're modern enough. Have you considered this? Have you considered that? And they go, you know what? Yeah. Right. And sometimes that's all it takes. And the third, some of them they just want to, they don't care about nothing. They're just non-compliant. They're like, I don't want to listen to you. But that is that. So it's okay to, what I'm saying is okay, not because I'm in this space, but it's
Mhm.
also okay to speak to someone. Sometimes people feel like you got to be there for months and years. Sometimes it
Right.
just takes a couple of sessions and it gives you enough tools and resources to keep going.
That's super important. So how do we know we need help? Like, as far as a Black man, what kind of advice would you give to them, or is there any strategies they can use before getting the help?
Listen, I listened to one of your episodes. You are the pro when it comes to this. When you start to, I wouldn't say when you start to feel some of the physical signs, because when you
Yeah.
start to feel some of the physical signs, man, that is a red flag. That is that blaring sign. Like, wait a minute, something's going on. But the thing is, we as Black men need to learn how to, I call it, scan ourselves. you know, like when something start to bubble up, you
Mhm.
need to pause. Like, where is that coming from?
Mhm.
And for me, I've been doing that. If I cannot identify where that is coming from, right, I need to speak to someone. I really do. Like, for instance, the other day, I think it was last Saturday, um, I was I had this negative, I call it negative feelings.
Yeah.
And I was like, where's that coming from?
Mhm.
And I scanned and I scanned and I did some self reflection. believe it or not, this sounds so stupid, but I'm gonna say it anyway. I was sad because my soccer team had lost.
Mm.
Believe it or not, so I'm a huge soccer fan.
Yeah.
Huge soccer fan. And I was like, they lost the game, and I was like, oh, that's where it's coming from. Oh, that's just a game. So I had to like, okay,
You felt
come,
better.
and I felt better. It's like, oh, that's just a game, right? But believe it or not, so my point is learning how to pause, scan yourself. Where is this coming from? And this is going to take practice. And then you start to figure it out. And if you feel like you can't, for whatever reason, you just can't figure it out, call a friend.
Mhm.
I believe that's why I said men need each other.
Mhm.
Have that conversation with someone, because before you know, you start to act out and yell at you. Like, I'm doing better with them kids because they drive me crazy.
I know.
I'm trying. I'm trying not to overreact, right? And so I'm learning. But sometimes we hang on to these emotions, and then before I know it explodes, and like, where did that come from? Why am I acting that way? You
Yes.
don't want to get there. That's the point I'm trying to make.
And that's why self-reflection is so important. Scan your body, scan your mind, scan your thoughts. What was that happened? And that's not stupid. I mean,
Yes,
being upset about a soccer team, that happens. We all get that way. But that's why it's so important for that self-reflection and understanding yourself so that you can realize, oh, that's why I'm upset. And then move on,
exactly.
and yeah, exactly. So, well, I really appreciate you. We can talk on and on and on about this subject, especially with the stigma in Black men. But my question that I always ask people is, what is your journey to joy? Do you feel like you're on your journey to joy?
I am, believe it or not,
Yay.
this podcast space
Hmm.
has brought so much joy. The reason why is I get the opportunity to share myself with the world. I give them an opportunity to hear my story of resilience, and perhaps that can give them the tools or the strength to do better. And so that is my journey. And that is why when I took a break from after the first season, I couldn't wait to get back,
Yeah.
because that way I can just speak to people like you. I can have this conversation, and people can hear my voice, and I could lift somebody up. I feel like the more I do for others, the more comes back to me. I really believe that. When someone calls me up and say, "Man, that episode on incivility really," it's like, man, thank you. That is because I feel like I'm in my space, right? Because for so long I've been grinding, trying
Hmm.
to get this degree and this and that, and okay, now I'm here. Thank God.
Right.
I'm not completely broken. Now I can share with the world what I have and whatever information I have, tools I have, resources I have, to bless others. That's my answer.
That's awesome. And it feels good. So, where can people find you?
So right now, you can't really find me right now, but you will. Give it literally 1 month,
All
and
right.
it's gonna be everywhere. It's gonna be well with Gideon. Be well with Gideon. Um, it's something I'm building. I feel good about it. So hang in there. Um, you know, put on your calendar, whatever. In about a month, yeah, be well with Gideon. And but for now, if you want to hear my work, the Nurse Gideon angle
That's
on
still up there.
all listening platforms, it's still up there. So
Yeah, sounds great. I appreciate your time. Thank you for joining me on Journey to Joy Live.
you're welcome. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.